Thank you, Andy, and good afternoon to everybody from my side. So I now have the honor to introduce our first keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Albrecht Schmidt from LMU Munich. So at the LMU, Albrecht Schmidt holds a chair in human-centered ubiquitous media, researching on aspects like human-centered interaction, intelligent interactive systems, or human-centered AI. So today, Albrecht will talk about generative AI and wearables towards personal and personalized health. I'm very happy to have you here, Albrecht, and looking forward to your talk. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here, and I share my slides. Let's do that. I hope you see it now. Can you see the perfect?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So about myself, I think the chair is quite a mouthful, as Daniela said it well. So human-centered ubiquitous media. So I'm really interested in how humans interact with digital technology. And I'm a computer scientist. So we are building systems, we're building interventions. We work experimentally. So we are really interested in what can be built and what can be used by people with what impact. But talking about health, let's look at what we have. Okay, now it works. So I think if you look nowadays, what people suggest, getting people healthy seems really easy. So you eat the right food at the right amount, you sleep long enough and you relax, you be physically active, you walk a lot, you interact, you socialize, and you reflect on what you're doing. And I think if we do that, a lot of the issues that are sort of chronic diseases, etc., would be solved. And I think one of the questions I start with, why is this not easy? And I think it looks easy enough. I think you can tell this to a 15-year-old and they will probably say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And there is also no big challenge in understanding that. But we know, and probably most of us also from our own experience, I think, there is also real life competing for sleep. There is, being comfortable, competing for being active. So I think we are in that space where we have the knowledge, what is good for us, what we can do, but we are still not doing it. And the second part in this is, I think it's this short-term goals versus long-term goals. So if people manage to really keep the long-term goals in their minds, in their thinking, they have an easier time in doing this. But we know that a large part of the population has still a hard time. And I think if we look at obesity, etc., this is really an issue. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about how we can utilize technology to perhaps getting closer to making this easier for a large set of people. And I think this is sort of closing this health digital divide we were talking at the beginning. And let's start. So health is very personal. And what we see nowadays also that technologies are in a similarly, a very personal thing. So they're closely linked to individuals, what they want, their behaviors. And I think that's interesting. So health is impacted on what people do. And we also know this very general thing like being more active, being more social. That's not a one-size-fits-all solution. We know people are very different. People socialize in different ways. Also, people come with very different fundamentals. They have, on the one side, things they come with their own genetics, but also their choices. And this may be sort of not a specific lifestyle choice which they did, but it may be the job they chose, the place they live, which really impacts the lifestyle. And I will argue today that technology can really empower individuals to have a better well-being and health outcomes. But at the same time, this is not really easy to do. And I think the not easy to do is because it's the one size fits all does not work. And very often when we create apps, be it on a mobile phone, be it on a web page, be it on a watch, the things where I can build something that fits everybody, that's basically where it's easy to make profits. If I have the same app and that's used by 1 billion people, that's really where you want to go. If you have to do it individually, it gets harder. But I think the good news is we see now that with current technologies, in particular, sort of generative AI, we may be able to go that extra step to make it individual. And I think there it's convincing people to do the right thing is really hard. And I think everybody who works in healthcare knows this. You can tell people what they do, but once they're out of your side, they may have already sort of other priorities. And it's not that they've forgotten about it, it's really other priorities take over. And so we know that convincing people is hard. And also, this is an individual part. So a good argument for one person may be the wrong argument for the other person. So, and I think this is sort of the context I want to set this in. The other part of the context, so I'm not talking about health in general. I'm talking really about sort of 3 areas or 2 areas. So I think one is cardiovascular diseases. That's really sort of a big issue in many countries. And I think also mental health, another big issue. And when we looked at stuff in our lab, it's typically those 2 things that are on our mind. And also we link it to that, how have we designed technologies in the last 20 years? And I think it's in a way interesting. If you take a modern office, we have designed more and more things out that create activity. So if you go 10, 15 years back, you printed things, you walked to the printer, you picked it up. By now, it's cloud-based, so you will not print it out. And similarly, if you take a typewriter, there was physical strength in pressing keys. Now we are at this point that we still move our fingers, but it's very foreseeable that we move with large language models in combination with speech input to a way where we can sit without moving a whole day and be productive. But we know this is sort of making these issues we see here, in particular cardiovascular diseases and mental health, that's a bigger challenge. So basically there have been decades of design that reduce activity and people have happily taken it. And I think this links to many issues from basically our body to our mind. Now, why am I coming here still in a very positive mood? And I think that's to do with the technologies we have. I think what we see at the moment, wearable technologies for tracking vital signs, sleep, heart rate, stress, physical activity, they are getting mainstream. They're still at the moment for, I think, more the well-off, but it's very clear we see over the next years, those technologies will be as common as a phone. And also we have phones where we can also do some tracking on them. And then the other thing we see is that generative AI, mainly large language models at this point, or multimodal models, they have also been really pushing forward, having, sort of become widely available to build new applications. And I think the third part is people use devices that allows them to reflect on their own data, that allows them to track things they're doing, but it also allows them to be part of a community, to be that link into a community. And so the question is, the challenge we are facing is, how can we transform the data we can collect into meaningful actions that the user, the patient really wants to do for a better health? So I think a lot of people may be able to track their sleep, but the first thing is, do they even look at it or their heart rate? And once they look at it, does it have an impact on their health? Does it have an impact on their behavior? And I think this is really the challenge. So I argue here, the technologies, the base technologies are here, but we have not managed yet to really transfer those base technologies into something that really changes lives for people, that improves lives for people. So it's very clear that sort of the lack of movement as well as the lack of social interactions are a major part in this. And so it seems that focusing on them is sort of an easy win. And that's also, I think, in science, you look for sometimes for the things that you get sort of easiest, the low-hanging fruits. And I think over the last few years, we really looked into a number of issues that relate to this. And I go into some of them a bit deeper. So we know that the lack of activity, the lack of interactions, that really impacts, besides well-being, also people's productivities and their relationships. And what we see, it's very often linked to the workplace. You're in a workplace, and the workplace has a lot of power over your behavior. So because you spend a lot of your waking hours at work or on your way to work, that's why I think going into that direction, if the work environment can increase movement, can prioritize human-to-human interaction over digital interaction, make your work visible, that you really get sort of this, what have I done, and also allows reflection, then we can really make a major step forward, because the work environment gives us sort of this, in a way, this scaffold where we can put things in, at least for quite a significant part of the population. And now the question is, how can we do this? And I think the critical part in the workplace is, if we suggest things that have a negative impact on productivity, we probably have a hard time selling it. So in our work, in our research, we have been really looking, can we do those things and at the same time not reduce productivity? So I think there are a few things we looked into. It's really sort of, can we use generative AI to turn raw data into actionable insights that people make sustainable health changes or behavior changes? And I think at the beginning, I said that people are very different. And I think recommendations that are really fitting individuals, that's a key thing. So if there is something that's just right for me, where I really sort of, it fits my context, it fits my resources I have, and this may be sort of cognitive resources, mental resources, physical resources, it fits this and I can do that. I think the other one, which is symbolized by this picture here, I think if we get the feedback, the nudges in the right moment, when I have the resources, when I have the opportunity, we get a much better uptake than when we do it generally. So basically suggesting somebody when he is not tired, when he comes in the morning to work to take the stairs, maybe a much better idea than at a later time of the day. So really understanding where we can basically suggest things people can do without really burdening them more. And I think the central part is that data, making sense of data, AI only gets you to a certain part. Sometimes, and I think this will be especially for patients, you have to discuss the data with professionals. And I think here again, we haven't seen many tools to support us. So people have their own watch, have their own mobile phones, they have their steps, but really bringing this into the context of a consultation with a healthcare professional is another one of these open challenges. And that's very much linked to visualization tools to really make it easy to have an interpretation of the data, and not just of one point of data, really over sort of a phase of several weeks, months, years, to really understand what is good for a person, and having this interaction between the healthcare professional and the user. And I think it really, the goal is to use the data to empower people to take control. And at the moment we see that this creates another one of these divides. It's a certain type of people that are taking the technology, that are empowered. And I think as technology designers, we really have the challenge, and I think also the task, to make this broadly used. I think we have seen that other technologies such as social networks, they are now used by a very broad set of the population. Can we create technologies that are as easy to use as Instagram to get a similar uptake by people? And I think that's something I'm personally quite thrilled that we may have now the technologies at hand, that we get widespread usable technologies that increase the health of society and of individuals. When we looked at the workplace, we looked at three mechanisms, and I show a few things we build in those spaces. So there's three areas we particularly were interested in, is basically making physical activities again a part of the work. And I think I said earlier, a lot of the things from cloud computing to speech interaction, etc., has taken a lot of steps in the counter direction. And we looked into, can we do walking meetings? Do we have the technology to do walking meetings? I show this in a second. I think the other thing is, now, as we are here, we are not seeing each other, and this takes something from us. If we prioritize face-to-face over remote communication, and what we see, especially now in workplaces that are highly digital, people sit in offices next to each other and will do sort of a text-based communication. Here we looked in, can we really get people into a face-to-face communication? Because we know that's really changing what people experience. A third one is really the visibility of work, and I have something on the next slide on this. So it's really, if you are in the physical world doing things, you can see what you have done in the evening. So if you are a carpenter and you're done with the day, your workshop has a lot of wood on the floor, and you may have this nice wardrobe which you have made. In the digital world, that's much harder. And I think another part where we looked into, can we add a little bit of friction to an unhealthy behavior? Can we make it a little bit harder to do a text message rather than walking over to the other office? And I think if we integrate this in the workplace, this is sort of the chance to really, that it's a given, and that we are not basically having people to naturally choose, that we really can have a systematic change. And I think here a very simple example. So if you fix a button on one of your jackets, as I did here, you see the result, and you really get sort of, you do 5 minutes of work and you have a visible and lasting result. If I do 100 emails, I probably have forgotten this in a very short time. So really, one of the questions, how can we make what we do, what we work, and how can we do that it becomes more visible to us, that we have it in our mind, that we see these achievements? Two parts where we looked into more the physical activity spaces, we designed a technology for walking meetings. And I think what we have now, we can do voice recognition, we can do transcription, we can do note taking, and we explored this. And there are a lot of meetings in our work environment, but also we looked in companies. There are a lot of meetings where it's idea generation, it's decision making, where there is no reason why you should not do while you're walking. And I think traditionally we think the workplace is a desk and we sit down. And I think there we need to really innovate and look for tools. So why was it a workplace? And I think it goes back to monasteries. If you had to copy something, a workplace with a table was a great thing if you write by hand. But at the moment when we start moving into creating texts by prompts, when we make decisions based on information, there is no reason why we should be indoors or at a table. So I think that's really exploring a cultural change. And I think another one we looked into is, can we change our environment that it nudges us to do things? So that's on a much smaller scale. So we have standing desks, and we looked into, so what you usually have, people get the standing desks, they're excited. After 3 months, they forgot that they have a standing desk and they leave it in one position, typically the sitting position. So we looked into tables that seamlessly change the workplace. So you may go and get a coffee. Once you come back, the table is up. And then you're standing, and then you go at some point for the lunch break, you come back, it's down. So really, in a way, nudging people. And we know that people are not necessarily adverse to these things, but they're just too lazy, in quotation marks, to do it themselves, or they feel it doesn't have enough impact to do it. So really this is, in our view, one part. There's a lot of design space open that we can make work healthier. Now, what are sort of the opportunities and the challenges? I think what we see is the automation versus augmentation. What parts of the work do we want to automate? What part of the consultations do we want to automate? And where do we basically augment humans to interact with each other to do it better? I think there is obviously a lot of privacy issues if we talk about health data, sharing of health data, discussing of health data. And also, I think the reliance, the more, basically, if I get told, now take the stairs, now take the elevator, I may really lose agency for myself. But I think there are really interesting opportunities we see. It's basically, we can now create nudges based on situations, context, activity, stress, because we can recognize those things. We can also, use data to drive the design of applications. And we can, in this part, create arguments for individuals using LLMs, for example, to really target them, to target one individual. So the app may be the same for everybody, but we can really convince individual people in an individual situation. And I think that's a huge chance to really change from what we have so far. And I think also with these, AI taking away boring and repetitive tasks, we can probably bring for a lot of people more interesting work back that also hopefully has more interaction, that has more interaction between people. And I think this empowering through AI, I think what we see is really this interactive sense making, and I want to focus on this, explore what if. So I think if you have these things, oh, if I just walk every day the stairs, how is this impacting me? We can really start to provide something like personal simulations to people where it becomes sort of each small step becomes a part that creates something visible in me. And you could really sort of simulate your future self depending on actions, be it sleep, being activity, being sort of, taking time for yourself, taking time for reflection. And with this, I'm coming to towards the end. And I think one thing we've looked into recently more is this question of hybrid presence. I had one dissertation from one of our students, she finished just, it's really this concept of presence in a hybrid space. And I think work, life, family life, we are not in the physical world alone. We are not in the digital world alone. And it's not good to be physical or it's not good to be digital. We are inevitably in both worlds. And I think this is another design challenge we see. The devices blur. And I think if you look at this picture here, it's the question, if you use a device together, if you use a device for increasing engagement interaction, it's a positive way. But if everybody is looking into their own device, not interacting, I think we have an issue. So I think really trying to navigate the complexity of hybrid presence is another one, because we live in a world that has these hybrid features. And I think we haven't been very good at learning this to this point. And I think with this, I want to summarize, I think with digital technologies, with wearables, AI, we have the chance to empower health. We can really create solutions in the workplace that change lifestyle for a lot of people without compromising productivity or what we can work. And I think it's a unique time now with AI really taking over a lot of tasks over the next 10 to 15 years. There are challenges, but I'm really sort of sure we can strive towards sort of where we prioritize human well-being in our design. And I think with this, I'm open for questions.
Thanks a lot for the very interesting talk.